My name is Amy, and 3 years ago, I married the man I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. His name is Michael, and in the beginning, our marriage was everything I had hoped it would be. We both had good jobs, we were committed to building a future together, and while we hadn't yet decided when to start a family, we talked about it often. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. We both worked hard, and while balancing our careers wasn't always easy, we found our rhythm. Michael helped out around the house when he could. It wasn't always 50-50, but he'd take care of dinner on nights when I had to stay late at work and did the dishes over the weekends. It was a partnership, and I was content with the way things were. But over time, things started to shift in ways I didn't expect. It started subtly, so subtly that I didn't even notice at first. Michael began visiting his mother's house more frequently. At first, I didn't think much of it. His father had passed away 6 months ago, and his mother was struggling to adjust to life without him. Michael's brother, Robert, and his wife, Sarah, had moved in with her to help, and I thought Michael was just trying to support them, but then the visits became more frequent. Michael started staying over at his mother's house during the week, claiming he needed to help with household chores or provide emotional support. He'd spend entire weekends there, leaving me alone in our apartment. I told myself it was temporary, that once his mother adjusted to life without her husband, things would go back to normal. But they didn't. I started to feel uneasy. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Every time I asked Michael about his visits, he brushed me off. "Mom needs me," he would say, without giving any real explanation. I tried to be understanding. After all, his father's death had been hard on the entire family, and I knew Michael was close to his mother. But as the weeks turned into months, the situation didn't improve. In fact, it only seemed to get worse. Then one day, Sarah called me. She sounded exhausted, her voice tight with frustration. "Amy, I don't know how much longer I can take this," she said, her words rushed and anxious. I could hear her daughter playing in the background, her laughter a stark contrast to Sarah's stress. "What's going on?" I asked, sensing that this conversation was going to reveal something important. "It's Michael's mother," Sarah explained. She's out of control. Ever since Robert and I moved in, she's been trying to take over everything. It's like she can't let go. She even started disciplining our daughter in ways that I'm not comfortable with." I was taken aback. "Disciplining? How?" Sarah hesitated for a moment before answering. "She locks her in her room if she doesn't finish her meals." "It's terrifying, Amy. I've asked her to stop, but she just brushes me off, saying it's for her own good." I felt a chill run down my spine. Locking a child in a room as punishment? It sounded extreme, far beyond what could be considered normal. But I didn't know what to say. Sarah's voice trembled as she continued, explaining that Michael's mother had always been controlling, but since his father's death, it had escalated. "She justifies everything by saying that she knows what's best," Sarah said. "But it's affecting our marriage, too. Robert's caught in the middle, and I don't know how much more I can take." I listened as Sarah vented her frustrations, feeling a growing sense of unease. I didn't know Michael's mother all that well, but from what Sarah was telling me, it was clear that her behavior was causing serious problems, and Michael was spending more and more time with her. When I confronted Michael about it that evening, he was dismissive. "Mom's just trying to help," he said. "Sarah's overreacting." I couldn't believe how casually he was treating the situation. "Michael, locking a child in a room isn't help. It's harmful." "She's just doing what she thinks is best," he insisted. "Sarah's too stubborn sometimes. If she'd just let Mom help, everything would be fine." I was frustrated but didn't push further. I knew that no matter what I said, Michael wouldn't change his mind. He always took his mother's side. As the days went on, the situation grew worse. Michael continued to spend more time at his mother's house, and the more he stayed away, the more I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. He would come home late, often after I had gone to bed, And when I woke up in the morning, he was already gone. We barely spoke anymore, and when we did, it was usually about his mother. One evening, after yet another long day at work, I returned home to find Michael already gone. I called him, but he didn't pick up. It was becoming a familiar routine, me sitting alone in our apartment, wondering when or if he would come home that night. But this time, something felt different. There was a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach, a sense that something had changed. I called Sarah the next day to check in, and she sounded even more frazzled than before. "Amy, I don't know what to do anymore," she confessed. Last night, Michael's mother cut our daughter's hair, without asking, just chopped it off. "What?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. She said it was in the way, that long hair wasn't practical for a girl her age. But it was her decision to make, not mine. I can't do this anymore, Amy. I don't know how to deal with her. My heart sank as Sarah described the scene. Her daughter had been devastated, sobbing uncontrollably as she looked at her reflection in the mirror. Sarah had tried to confront Michael's mother, but she remained unapologetic, insisting that she was only doing what was best for the child. When Robert returned home and saw what had happened, there was a massive argument. He told his mother that if she didn't stop interfering, they would move out. The tension in the house was unbearable, and Michael once again found himself caught in the middle. But instead of siding with his brother and Sarah, he chose to support his mother. That night I tried to talk to Michael again, hoping to make him see reason. "Michael, this can't go on. Your mother is overstepping, and it's affecting everyone." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know things are tense, Amy, but Mom's grieving. She's not herself right now. She just needs time." "I get that," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "But her actions are hurting your brother and Sarah, and now it's affecting us. You're never home anymore. It's like you've abandoned our marriage." Michael looked at me, his eyes tired and distant. "I'm trying to help, Amy, but it's not easy. You don't understand how hard it's been for Mom." I wanted to scream. Of course, I understood grief. I understood loss. But this wasn't about grief anymore. It was about control. As the weeks passed, the situation only worsened. Michael was spending more and more time at his mother's house, and I felt like I was losing him. We had once been partners, equals in everything we did. But now, it felt like I was competing with his mother for his attention, and I was losing. Then, one evening, everything changed. I came home from work to find Michael's mother sitting in our living room. She was sipping tea, looking perfectly at ease, as if she had always belonged there. "Welcome home, Amy," she said with a smile. I froze in the doorway, my mind racing. What was she doing here? Michael emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Mom's going to stay with us for a little while," he announced, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. I stared at him in disbelief. "What? For how long?" He shrugged. "We'll see. She's been having a hard time, and I thought she could use a change of scenery." I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. He hadn't even bothered to discuss it with me. He had made this decision on his own, without any input from me. And now, his mother was living in our apartment, occupying the spare room that we had once talked about turning into a nursery. That night, I barely slept. The tension in the apartment was suffocating, and I felt like I was being pushed out of my own life. Michael's mother had already caused so much damage to Robert and Sarah's family, and now she was here, in my space, disrupting my marriage. I knew I had to confront Michael, but I didn't know how. Every time I tried to bring up the issue, his mother was there, hovering in the background. And when I did manage to get him alone, he was dismissive, brushing off my concerns with the same excuses. "Mom's just trying to help. She'll leave soon." But I knew better. This wasn't temporary. His mother had no intention of leaving, and Michael wasn't going to ask her to. The breaking point came the next day. I sent Michael a message during my lunch break, asking him to meet me after work so we could talk privately. I told him that we needed to have an honest conversation about what was happening, about the strain his mother was putting on our marriage. But when I arrived at the cafe where we had agreed to meet, Michael wasn't there. I waited for nearly an hour, sending him messages and trying to call, but there was no response. Worried, I decided to head home, hoping to find him there. When I opened the door to our apartment, I found Michael sitting on the couch, laughing with his mother as though nothing was wrong. "Michael," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I asked you to meet me after work. Why didn't you show up?" He looked at me with mild confusion. "Mom was feeling lonely, so I came home. We can talk later." That was it. That was the moment I realized that nothing was going to change. Michael had made his choice, and it wasn't me. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I made a decision. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't stay in a marriage where I was being sidelined, where my needs and feelings were ignored. Michael had chosen his mother over me, and there was no coming back from that. The next day, I packed a bag and left. I went to my parents' house, needing space to think, to breathe. Michael called several times, but I didn't answer. I needed time to figure out what I wanted, and I knew that staying in our apartment wasn't an option anymore. After a few days of reflection, I made up my mind. I was done. I returned to the apartment with a plan. Michael was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in, looking surprised to see me. "Amy," he began, "I'm glad you're back. I've been meaning to talk to you." I cut him off. "Michael, I'm not here to talk. I'm here to ask you and your mother to leave." He blinked in confusion. "What? Why?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Because I'm done, Michael. I can't do this anymore. You've made your choice, and it's not me. So, I'm asking you to leave." His face fell, and for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of regret in his eyes. "Amy, I shook my head. "It's too late, Michael. I'm done." I handed him the divorce papers, my hand steady despite the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling inside. Michael stared at them for a long moment, as though he couldn't